Okay, so metal.
Metal.
This show's about metal.
What is metal? We're going to spread the hidden value in music.
We're going to proselytize. We're going to get the word out there.
We are.
That's important.
Hello, world. Welcome to episode 39 of the Great Metal Podcast. We are here with Shredmaster Scott, Just Pete, and the Metal Evangelist Luke. And today we are going to, we're going to shut down the debate. The debate's over, and we're going to talk about the greatest musical instrument on the planet that's ever existed.
Yeah.
What is it? The theorbo. No, just kidding.
Yeah.
Just kidding. It's actually the guitar.
Yes.
And we have all the proof. We're going to dive into all the proof. The big guys say it. We can demonstrate it. And we just lost Shred, our resident guitarist master, and he just disappeared.
I have a backup. You know, when Black Metal Cat picked up an instrument, he played guitar.
Yeah. What did Black Metal Cat play? The guitar.
He played the guitar. That's
he
for
wasn't
sure.
playing. He wasn't playing the flute, so we know that it's got to be the guitar.
There.
Shred's back.
He went a little too metal.
Like this crazy feedback.
Like audio or video?
Audio.
Oh,
huh.
That's weird. You know, on the guitar, the feedback loop. Oh, there he goes again. Okay.
Wow.
But the feedback loop was one of the reasons why they had to innovate the electric guitar and go from a semi-hollow body to the solid body. But we'll get into that.
Yeah. There's a lot of the way that the guitar developed to be the preeminent instrument in metal is interesting for sure. But also, I think what it's doing in metal is important too. Shred, are you back with us?
I'm back. I got my guitar. It's got a G string. We're ready to go. Let's be honest here. Pete, what instrument do you play?
If you look carefully in the background, you can see an electric guitar.
Electric guitar.
Case.
Luke, how about you? What do you play?
I've got an electric guitar. I also have a ukulele behind me, but you
also
can't see
acoustic.
it.
This is guitar. That's all the proof we need. It's the greatest instrument ever.
Shred just he just wrapped it all up.
All you need,
so
baby.
So here's the thing. I mean, we were talking about this earlier, and we're like, how did the electric guitar become the definitive sound and look, the physical look of metal? And so, we started going into this, and when we went down a rabbit hole, we know more about the development of the guitar now than we ever did before. And we're not going to go through it starting in 3100 BC with the oud.
We're starting in 666 BC, right?
We're going to get started in 666. Yeah.
A little bit later.
To that point, so Rob Scallon has he invited a string instrument historian onto his channel. It's like an hour-long documentary.
You watched the whole thing, huh?
I watched the whole thing. Oh, it's fascinating.
Crazy.
Fascinating. So if you guys really want to know about, how the oud turned into the lute and turned into the Baroque guitar and finally, up to the modern day acoustic guitar, check out his video. It's really, really interesting stuff. But they talk a lot about like the structure and the necessity of playing in you're playing in the royal court, right? On a lute.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Then you get to the 1920s in the big band era, and nobody could hear the guitar. So they're like, how do we make the guitar louder? And so that is what necessitated, pickups and electric amplification, all this kind of stuff. But
right.
That's wild. The problem was no one could hear the guitar. Now you always hear about like turn the guitar down.
It's true.
Did
the pendulum swing
Every
too far?
guitar player has been told that many times at a live show, myself included. You're always just like, and even after they you turn it down, you sneak over and maybe just turn it up to 11 a little bit without anybody noticing.
Yeah. Well, so we're just going to cover the history of the guitar real briefly. And then of course, this is the Great Metal Podcast. So we want to talk more about like it's, the guitar's influence on metal and, what came first, metal or the guitar, right? Well, chicken or the egg thing.
As we covered way back at the beginning, the electric or metal rather is the greatest of all music. So if the electric guitar being, the preeminent instrument of that also by default makes it the greatest of all instruments. Right?
It's
easy
to
prove
logical argument. It's using sound logic here. I like it.
Yeah. It doesn't get any more definitive than that.
I mean, and listen, you don't need all of this like complicated history lesson stuff to know that. You just feel it when you hear the sound, that ultra testosterone, testicular fortitude just coming at you, just frying your face, cooking your brain. Like I remember the first time I heard electric guitar, and it was just life altering. I was like, that's it. That's for me. That's what I'm doing. End of story. It just had that much of an effect.
Well, and had you been born like, I don't know, 60 some years before you actually were born, you might have invented it, right? Because it was a total accident, right? I mean, the dudes like damaged their amps, and then that's what caused the guitar to distort. And then they were like, this is actually, this fuzz is like a really, really cool sound. So then
the Kinks split their speaker cone.
Well, they did it intentionally
with knitting needles. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It happened prior to that by accident. I can't remember who it was, but somebody's amp got damaged in transport or something. And then it had this like fuzz effect to it. Everybody was like, oh my gosh, we got to get this amp fixed. Cool. Yeah. But then other people were like, no, that sounds really, really awesome. So then they were like intentionally damaging their amps to try to get that sound, cutting their cones and shit. Yeah. So
cut those cones, bro.
Cut the cones. But so anyway, just like the super like 30-second history of the guitar as a string instrument, it was for as long as people have been around, they've been making music, right? We've talked about this before. It was vocals, and then like they're tapping on bongos and rocks and stuff. And but then they found you have strings, different gauges of strings at different tensions, you get different tones, and so this is what's going on with the oud, right? 5,000 years ago. And
we were talking about this before the show. I mean, there's even like we went to the gent route a long time ago. It got up to like 30 strings or something crazy.
Lots of strings.
Yeah. So we're not even in the gent modern day. It's like we're kind of flirting with 9 strings now, but no, we've been way further than that in the past. So we're kind of coming full circle. It's so fascinating to see the evolution of the instrument, and it has some of the most rich history in terms of how it's been modified compared to other instruments, which have been a little bit more static throughout time. But since the guitar is so popular, we're like, we got to figure out how to get the most out of this thing.
Yeah. Well, and so, I mean, that's a great, do you have something?
I was just going to say it's made of good hardwood too. So it's a very malleable instrument that we can get a lot of use out of it.
Too. Sometimes I just like to stroke it.
Yeah. You just like to notice there's no seam there on the neck through.
Yeah. There you go. Hey, really good point by Emmanuel here, Carabas. He said, why don't we make this live on Shred's channel? I don't know. That would be a decision for Shred to make. No question, there'd be a lot more viewers if it were live on Shred's channel.
We could try it. It would be, maybe we should try it, see what happens. It would definitely be a curveball It's like you get used to, it's like you have Joe Rogan and you have the fans of his, MMA stuff, and then you have people watch for the podcast. It's just like a separate brand, basically, Emmanuel. That's what we're doing on this channel. But it is an interesting idea.
Yeah, it would definitely get a bigger viewer base. Shred's viewer base is very, very large. So, okay. So anyway, history of the guitar in like, I don't know, 90 seconds or less. So, back in the caves or whatever, they're like, playing these stringed instruments. This is going on for thousands of years. What ends up happening is the guitar, because it's generally quiet, right? The oud and the lute, they're generally quiet. What would happen is kings would hire these bards, these minstrels, troubadours, if you will, and they would have them play these lutes and ouds in the background of the royal court, like background music.
That was like your record player or CD or vinyl. It had to be live musicians.
That's where the people got good. They just sit there all day, every day playing.
That would be so exhausting too. People don't realize how much work that takes. You're constantly playing for hours.
No, they got good with their fingers, man. They got good with those things.
Real good with those things.
Right. So anyway, this is like a background instrument. But it was very.
What year are we talking about here, Luke? 3,000. We're going all the way back to Babylon.
Yeah. So that's where it kind of started. Yep. Mesopotamia, that's kind of where civilization began. Long time ago. Yeah. About 5,000-6,000 years. And so, and that's when they started doing this stuff. So, anyway, fast forward a little bit, and they're constantly adapting the lutes and stuff because different people wanted a different sound, or they were trying to for instance, they extended the neck because they needed to be able to hit higher notes, doing all this kind of stuff out of necessity because musical tastes change throughout time and whatnot. To the point where it got to, the precursor to the ukulele, they went from, 9, 10, 12, 11 strings down to 4 because it was, there's one right there. The reason they went to 4 strings is because they wanted to be able to play chords easier. And so with 4, you have 3 notes to a chord. So you can use 1 finger or 2 fingers to make chords instead of having to use, all 3 fingers or something, right? It's just a lot easier to play. And then, of course,
use plectrums or picks back then, huh?
So they had this instrument. It was like a long pick, and they'd hold it in their hand. So there would actually be a pick coming out on either side of your hand so that they could go up and down faster. It's really, really odd.
Wow.
But then a lot of that went away, and they just used their fingers because they wanted to be able to multiple notes at the same time. So they could hit a bass note with their thumb.
Not 2 chicks at the same time, 2 notes at the same time. The same thing, note, right?
Exact same thing, Shred. So, anyway, okay, fast forward. Let's go all the way up. 1920s, right? We have the big band era. And now suddenly this guitar that's quiet and meant as background music can't be heard over the trombones and all on the drums and all this kind of stuff. So they're like, we need to like make the guitar louder. So who comes along? This guy, I think his name was Brady, and another dude, and then Rickenbacker, Adolf Rickenbacker.
Adolf was his first name. Damn.
Yes, first name was Adolf.
And he's the guy that's connected with the Rickenbacker bass, right?
Right.
And all that.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
Great bass.
he originally started this company with the goal of making all instruments electric. He's like, he's like, I want to be able to electrically amplify all instruments. Well,
this guy was the OG 11 dude. You think it started with Spinal Tap? No,
it was Rickenbacker. And now I don't think he did much. He was instrumental then in developing the pickup, the electric pickup. I don't think he did much with other instruments. Like he really started focusing on guitar, and that's, you know, kind of where he stayed. But
yeah, you
now,
find eventually it's difficult to do everything. It's good to start with a goal. I'm going to electrify every instrument. But then you find out that you run out of steam. You got to focus a little somewhere.
And is it really worth electrifying like the triangle or stupid instruments like that? Nah, don't waste your time, bro.
It's probably not a lot of bang for your buck there. Electrifying the triangle.
That would be
sounds like a torture instrument.
Yeah, I mean, by inventing the electronic pickup, he really kind of did electrify
that's true.
Every instrument. You know, the violin and the cello, all these other instruments now can be electronically amplified because of the pickup. So,
but still, the guitar is the greatest electrified instrument. You know, it's just.
Well, it is. So, I mean, that leads to the question of, you know, why the guitar, right? Mm-hmm. And so, really interesting comments here by the one and only Andre Segovia. Does he pronounce his first name Andre, or does he pronounce the S? Andre Segovia. Yeah. Yes. So Andre Segovia, obviously a world-renowned classical guitarist.
From Spain.
He's what?
From Spain. That's, you know, big part of the history of the classical guitar. A lot of Spanish classical guitar pieces.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's a little clip of Segovia playing his guitar, and then an interview, a short interview with him on him answering the question about, you know, why is the guitar
the best
great instrument? So here it is.
Old man can shred.
Yeah.
This was the youngest clip of him I could find.
Well, he was literally 94 when he died, so he's been around a while.
Maestro, why was it that in spite of the vogue of the guitar in the 19th century, that still, when you began, there was no repertoire?
Because the guitar is a very complicated instrument. By being the only string instrument really polyphonic, it is impossible to compose if you don't play it, and if you don't play it well. For instance, it is like an orchestra to which we could look with the reverse sides of 8 binoculars. I mean by that everything, every instrument of the orchestra is inside the guitar, but in smaller sound size. It has many different colors, many different timbres, and it is necessary to develop those quality of the instrument. For instance, if you have to play sounds that, the same thing. All that has different color.
So you see what he's saying there is like the versatility of the guitar. He said every instrument of an orchestra can be found in a guitar. You can make a guitar change tone. You can, and he said it's polyphonic, right? You can play more than one note at a time. You can't do that on a flute. You can't do that on even other stringed instruments like a violin or a cello. You can play more than one note at a time. It's harder. It's a lot harder. And almost impossible to play like full chords, right? So he's like, this guitar thing, it's polyphonic. I can do anything any other instrument can do. It might not sound exactly like, it's not going to sound like a flute, right? Now the electric guitar, maybe it does, but you can do anything with this thing. It's portable. You can move around with it. I mean, the
Dude,
benefits to this
how are you going to
guitar.
go to the beach with a piano and seduce babes with Wonderwall?
Well,
I mean,
that's
not
the
going to fly.
question.
You got to be able to put your guitar in your backpack, head out to that beach, and boom, instant music. It's easy.
Right.
Well, I do think
that
that's one of the
portability's
key
huge.
distinguishers from the piano, because a lot of the same qualities, the piano has a lot of the same qualities as a guitar, and the chords and the two hands and the range, but you just can't take it along with you. And there's also a certain tonal quality that, like what he was doing there with those, that little run, you can create different tone sounds. You can't do that with a piano.
You can, but it's not as diverse,
Right.
Like you can push the pedal down or you can not push the pedal down. But when you strike a note on the piano, like you're much more limited in terms of the diversity of tone that you can create. Whereas on the guitar, you can do sol ponticello closer to the bridge or come up closer to the neck for a much darker sound. And, depending on how much flesh you use versus nail, when we're talking about classical guitar, that's just an infinite range of tone, way, way more diverse.
Yeah. Right. And so Esmo said, I think when he said polyphonic, he meant multiple melody lines. No question, for sure. But also, multiple voicings, right? I mean, you can have the soprano, you can have bass, alto, and tenor all in one piece, all at the same time.
Well, he was also demonstrating this idea that you can play the same pitch in different places on the guitar. That's what he meant by his complicated. So on the piano, there's only one middle C. You can only play middle C on the piano at middle C. There's only one spot to do that. But on the guitar, you can play it in multiple places, right? So that's another thing he was trying to demonstrate. So it makes the instrument more complex, but also have more possibilities, capabilities.
Yeah, the little bit of like vibrato and stuff he was doing as he went up too was providing a variety that, again, with the piano, you can hit the key harder or softer, but you can't bring that emotion maybe of your finger like you can on the 100%. Fretboard.
Yeah, it's the articulation is what we call it. In other words, how you strike a note. There's more ways to strike a note on the guitar by far. And that does translate to expressive quality, and that's part of music, right? If you're a musician, you're trying to convey emotional content to the listener, and the way that you do that is through a diversity in your dynamic articulation, or one way you can do that.
Yeah, that's right. And so when you have all of that in a single instrument, it's no wonder that this thing, like Shred said earlier, more than any other instrument has evolved. It's changed. It's grown. Yeah. I mean, literally, I guess the piano precursor would be like the harpsichord, maybe.
Harpsichord,
And then there's like an organ and then a piano, you know what I mean? So it's like, there has been obviously some development and evolution in other instruments, but nothing like the guitar. Yeah. And so it totally makes sense. You get to, hey, we want to take the guitar to the next level during big band. So now we need to be able to amplify it. Mm-hmm. Well, then in amplifying it, like we were talking about earlier, what ends up happening is people are like, that instrument's really, really cool. Now that I can hear it, behind the big band, that thing, not only is it very functional as a rhythm instrument, it's also very functional as a lead instrument, as a solo instrument. And so then you get, fast forwarding a little bit, you get guys like, Jimi Hendrix and whatever that are just, tearing it up. But so what ends up happening is they have this electric distortion now that's coming through an amplifier. These amps start getting damaged as they move around, because you got this, sound cone that's, projected. Well, they get tears in them or whatever. And then if you turn it too loud, like the Shred, you can talk to this, the frequency gets distorted, right?
Yeah. Overdrive is what they call
Yeah,
it.
overdrive.
You know? That's different than distortion. Distortion isn't, pushing the amp past its limits. Overdrive is. That's when you literally just redlining. You're going to 11, Spinal Tap style, right?
Yeah.
Right.
That's like a particular sound. Yeah.
So that's how like that started, right? People are like doing overdrive and they're like, oh, I like that fuzzy sound,
Yeah.
that clippy fuzzy sound. So then they're trying to like, guitarists, very innovative people, both musically as well as physically. They're trying to like alter their instrument to do something that it can't do or hasn't been able to do. And so that's when you get up to the Kinks and whatnot. And these guys are like, we want this very particular rough, fuzzy, harsh sound. And so they're
buzz, bro.
Yes, poking holes in their amplifiers. So then of course, guys like Tommy Iommi and basically Deep Purple, Black Sabbath, these guys really latch onto this sound.
Yeah,
and that's
Tony was like, listen, Marshall, can you make me the fuzz? Instead of me having to just push the amp past its capacity, can you just like build this into the amp? And here we go. Metal is born.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Literally. So this sound of the electric guitar in overdrive is what these guys like Tommy Iommi are like, I want to use this to create a new genre of music, essentially. And then you have the birth of heavy metal. So, the chicken or the egg thing, is tough because, like we talked about last week, classical music structurally is very similar to modern day metal. Some of what they were playing, I would say, is damn near metal, just without the distorted guitar, right? So can you have metal without distortion? Yes. But distortion is like this key ingredient, right?
Muy importante. Do we have any clips that prove that point? What do we have here coming up next?
Well, we really do. We really do. Now, so first of all, on the point of, the guitar being an extremely expressive instrument. And I think part of the reason why it's so popular, because if you're trying to project, some kind of emotional feelings or whatever, you need the more expressive you are in projecting that, the more you're going to feel it. Right. So let's take a look here. Probably in the modern era, one of the most expressive guitar players, physically expressive as well as his playing, is Steve Vai.
Mr. Vai. Oh, yes. Dr. Vai.
Never seen anybody that is so expressive in what he's playing and like just in his demeanor. So,
and talk about, just to set this up too, when we were talking earlier, about like the tone quality and variance with how you can play a note. I mean, you could play all these same notes that Steve's about to play if you were good, but his expression that comes through with what the instrument allows, as capable of, is unparalleled.
Yeah.
Right. And just to make it even more ridiculous, Steve just released this video for his song called Knapsack, like just a couple months ago, I think. And he just had surgery on his arm. And so he's going to do it all one-handed.
Yeah, one-handed.
just to make it more interesting. So let's check out Knapsack by Steve Vai.
Couldn't help it. Just couldn't help it at the end.
He
Try
could,
doing that on piano.
Yeah. Well,
Checkmate, pianist.
I have never seen anybody feel what he plays like Steve Vai.
Well, that's the thing too.
Like
There's
words flashing up on the screen, right? What he's feeling. Like what's that face, Steve? That's this word or that word.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, he also that there is an expression like a connection to the instrument that's different too. I think with the guitar because you're so you're touching it, so closely. Where again, a piano, like you're not actually hitting the strings. It's strings that you're hearing essentially, but there's these hammers. It's mechanical a little bit more, and I'm not downplaying the piano. There's great expression in it.
It's okay if you are, Pete.
The physical connection
there's a more
to a guitar,
organic connection, right? With the guitar, you're just closer to.
Well, did you see what Steve was doing? Like, sometimes he wouldn't necessarily be bending the string, but he'd be like moving his finger between the frets to get like a little different intonation. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. He does this kind of like circular vibrato thing, which is very innovative. Classical vibrato is like kind of back and forth, and then blues vibrato is up and down. He does both at the same time. That's that like sort of circular thing.
Yeah. So, hey, this is actually a really interesting point by Esmo. He said guitar is capable of creating very, very different is it timbres?
Timbre. Yeah, no. Segovia says timbers, like the trees.
Yeah.
Timber.
That's what I always used to say. But you corrected me.
Yeah, timbre. But the point is that timbre means tone quality. So
so Esmo says, the guitar is capable of creating very different timbres by producing different overtone series. So every guitar player can create his own signature tone like Petrucci. That's again so big of a point because on a piano you can have your own stylistic stuff in terms of what you play and how you play it, but you don't get to craft your own tone with a piano or a flute or whatever. You can with an electric guitar and to a lesser extent with an acoustic guitar, but with an electric guitar you can really get into crafting a very unique sound that's very specific to you individually. So it's a very individual instrument. It's like that's a huge point that can't be overstated.
It's so true. So get yourself an electric guitar if you don't already play. I can't imagine people are watching this that don't play, but if you don't, get yourself a damn guitar and start.
If you don't play guitar or you do, comment, what do you play? Do you just enjoy listening to music, which is legit, or do you enjoy getting in there?
Petru says, I have recently rediscovered the guitar, and I'm currently developing my evil guitar skills. So, okay. So it sounds like he does have a history with it, but
you can make it, Petru. You can do it.
I don't know.
Says, I hope I can make it. You can do it.
That's right. I've tried a few different instruments, violin, the cello. I don't think I've done any wind instruments, but if I did, I would try French horn. But I always come back to the guitar, Of course, I play a little bit of piano. I'm trying to think if there's anything else.
Mandolin? You did some mando metal?
Mandolin. Yeah, that's all kind of like string instruments, sort of within the realm of the guitar. But yeah, I just always come back to the guitar. It's just the best vehicle to express my creativity.
Well, and to that point, I mean, just some other things that are very unique to stringed instruments, but really the guitar specifically is like string bending, right? I mean, we just saw Steve Vai do it. We have a clip here of Michael Romeo who does it too. And that is so expressive to be able to, take that note and move it up or pull it back down. I mean, it's so powerful.
Well, see, that's what Pete mentioned this a minute ago, like the organic nature of the guitar, being able to directly access the string. See, a lot of people maybe don't realize this. The piano is a stringed instrument, just like the guitar, but you're not directly interfacing with the strings. There's a middleman, which is the key that you're pressing. But on the guitar, you're directly interfacing with what produces the tone and the sound. And that, really, it just makes you do things differently, and brings out this really expressive quality. Dude, let's check out that Romeo clip, though. That guy is just fire.
So here's Romeo. This is off of his solo album. So I don't actually know the name of the song.
He puts 100% of his expression into his instrument, not into his face.
No,
so that makes it extra
situation. Steve Vai here, yeah.
It's true. Very different from Steve Vai, but musically, this is expressive. Here we go. Michael Romeo.
What?
It's a great example of how he sounds so different from Steve.
Awesome.
Crafting your unique sound.
I want to be Romeo's Juliet. He probably already has Juliet, but did anybody notice the Darth Vader in the background? He's a huge fan of Star Wars, big Star Wars fan. So, and that's actually one thing I think that makes Romeo so great is he's obsessed with film composers. John Williams, doing Star Wars, and a lot of other guys. That just brings like a really interesting aspect to his playing.
One other interesting thing, I wanted to throw this comment up quick from Brandon. He said he plays guitar, bass, and drums.
Nice.
And one thing that is interesting when you play multiple instruments, I think, is that it starts when I started playing bass, and I had just played electric guitar. It makes you think about how you go back and approach electric guitar again, or vice versa. Mm-hmm. You kind of bring a different perspective to the band if you understand what some of the other instruments are doing more.
Oh yeah. I mean, listen, let's be honest here. Most guitar players' ego is like just 666 points out of 666, right? And they're not really thinking about anybody else. They're just like, is my part sounding cool? Can I have some space to shred here? But if you play the other instruments, then you realize, oh, we're all in this together. And if the guitar isn't occupying, the right mix level or whatever in the track, it ruins the whole thing. So everything's got to be working together.
Yeah.
And when you play other instruments, you suddenly realize that for the first time.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, as you guys can probably see from those clips, I mean, the guitar, like, I'm sure everybody has heard a violin solo or a flute solo or something. They can be really, really impressive and they can sound really, really cool, but there's an element of expression that you just don't get when someone's using vibrato, when they're bending those strings and they're just like pulling your soul out of its body for a second. I mean, that's just something very unique to the guitar. I would say it's very metal. Like, you just don't see it in a lot of other genres.
Do we have a flute solo? I feel like we do.
Well, we do. So I mean, that's kind of the thing, right? I mean, when we're talking about, why, so we kind of know like how the guitar has come to be the face of metal and the sound of metal. But for shiggles and diggles, what would metal be like without an electric guitar? What would it sound like? Well, we actually, the internet is a wonderful place, and there are some incredibly talented musicians out there that have covered a lot of metal songs on, non-traditional metal instruments. So here is a flute rendition of Chop Suey. Now, this is impressive.
Still got a guitar in the background.
Does have a guitar.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
I'm not disappointed that the flute exists or anything. It's just that, like, can you
No, it's
imagine
awesome, the
just
flute.
playing the flute, instead of guitar? I wouldn't be able to really express what I want to express,
Yeah,
I
well,
feel like a lot of people that play those type of instruments play like several woodwind instruments type, or I mean that's metal, but wind
Same
instruments.
thing.
Then they
If it
kind
was
of
an
can
oboe or a
express.
clarinet,
But I think they get their expression through playing multiple types. That lets
oh,
them
wow.
kind of branch a little bit
Or
more.
maybe
Maybe
they've just never played a power chord on the distorted electric guitar, right?
That's the
The
problem.
second you do that at 11 volume, you're sold. It's over. It's done.
that'll do it.
Give up. Give up on the flute. No, don't give up on the flute.
See, right
I'm not
here.
saying that. I'm just
Don't think that metal would exist without the electric guitar from Petru. It's like, and I think that's the point. Like we're kind of saying, like, how did it come to define it? Like the sound of the electric guitar, like, is an integral part of metal. Like it is metal. That is partly how
it's
you
the
define
soul
metal.
of the machine, man. That's the engine that drives
really-
metal forward.
It really is. And there's something about these other instruments as unique and as cool as they can sound. There is a punch in the face factor, a heaviness, right? I mean, it's why it's called heavy metal. There is a heaviness that the electric guitar has that other instruments don't. Here's an example of that. So this is a song everybody knows, Enter Sandman, only played on a ukulele, and notice how thin and light it feels, right? Here it is.
Nice pink. Yeah, pink ukulele.
And black.
I mean, is your face melting right now?
No, Luke, it's not.
Like he's getting the explosion from his fro, not from the electric
the
guitar.
fro's the best part of it. It's even mixed really loud, and it still just doesn't have a punch.
Yeah. It just Enter Sandman as in like sitting on the beach, relaxing, man. Sandman.
More like Enter Bitch Man.
Enter Hawaiian beach times.
I love these like metal covers on non-traditional instruments, but there is no question that build up in the intro to Enter Sandman, and then when it comes in, dun 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 dun, dun you feel it. Oh yeah, it punches you in the face.
I remember the first time I heard that song. Yeah, it was a big deal. That was it felt good, man.
I think it's fun. These things are fun, but they're not. They wouldn't like that song would not have become popular if it's originated on a ukulele.
Of course, yeah, it's fun because it's a joke. We're just like making fun of it. It's so absurd, it's so silly. You can't possibly compare with the electric guitar.
And even if it sounds good, it's lacking that energy. It's lacking that whatever you want to call that intensity, right? It just sounds
fortitude, Luke, is the word you're looking for.
Lacking the testicular fortitude. That is a good way to put it. And there you can even like vocals actually help a lot too. So so this next example is actually so it's Rob Scallon, and he's playing
right.
No, we're gonna do Psychosocial by Slipknot.
Slipknot, okay.
So he does a banjo cover, but he has Leo Moracchioli sing. So here's an example of a metal song with metal vocals, but played on a banjo. So let's check that out.
Opera masks. What are those?
I did my
Yeah.
time, an hour now. So effusive, fate, it doesn't cut. The soul is not so vibrant. The reckoning, the sickening, back into subversion. Pseudo-sacred psycho-version. Go dwell your deserts, go dig your graves. Then fill your mouth with all the money you will save. Shrinking in, getting smaller again. One done, it has begun. I'm not the only one. And the rain will kill us all. Throw ourselves against the wall. But no one else can see the preservation of the martyr in me.
I didn't know that was Leo doing that. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's Leo. So, I mean, again, like you've got that thick metal vocals going, but without that guitar, it's just sounding a little light. It's just, it's not crushing my back or my soul.
No. Weak sauce.
That would be a very different world of metal.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, Rob Scally, he does a great job. He has all kinds of covers. And actually we have one more of him. But he's also, with Sarah Longfield doing ukulele cover of Cannibal Corpse. So let's check that. This is like the most extreme metal, right? Or, very far
Cannibal
extreme.
Corpse just came out with a new record, by the way.
Yeah. Is it out?
It's out. Metal Blade just released the whole thing on their YouTube channel, which I think is a forward-thinking marketing strategy. Instead of just letting it fans slowly trickle it out, they're just like, here you go.
Yeah.
Let's not play games here. Yeah.
Don't wait for the leak, man. Get it out there.
Yeah, just put it out.
So I don't think this is off their new one. This one's called Evidence in the Furnace. But here's Cannibal Corpse on a ukulele.
The other people in the uke are
I love the different. Oh,
funny. Rob has like the metal explorer shape on his ook. You guys notice that?
Oh, yeah, I didn't notice that.
Like, James Hetfield's explorer shape or something.
Yeah, it had like the V cut at the top.
Yeah.
Well, so I mean, here's the thing. I think, I think it was Petru earlier said metal wouldn't exist without the electric guitar. I think that's true. I think that's definitively true. I also think that you would have this if the electric guitar had never been invented. This would still be a thing. You would have some heavy music because this isn't bad. This is actually good stuff. It just lacks that heavy intensity of the electric guitar. So I think you need the electric guitar. You got to, and I'm you're glad we have it.
Your point is that people would be trying to express what metal has enabled them to express in other ways if they didn't have the electric guitar.
Like,
Someone
it's like
probably
a half chub. We're like sort of half mass. It's like, no. We got to get all the way up, Otherwise, it's just not. It's not right,
It's just not getting the job done.
It's not getting the job done.
And you know what's really cool is that the guitar continues to innovate. I mean, we're not even close to done. It's still going like crazy. I mean, just in the last, I don't know, 15, 20 years, you're seeing things like, like the headless guitars, right? I'm still not 100% sure what the advantage is other than, you're not breaking your headstock off. But then there's like they have like auto tuning guitars, like the technology in guitars is radically evolving. And then of course you have different types of materials that you have, excuse me, you have all these different innovations going on currently, which is really cool. Scott, you go to NAMM, right?
Yeah, but NAMM's been canceled for a while, so
the last basically, yeah. Right. And that's a lot of like, people showcasing innovations on guitars, correct?
Yeah. Oh yeah, and all instruments. But it's definitely still evolving, and even the technique on the instrument, we're still finding out what's possible to play. Franz Liszt pretty much mapped out the technique for the keyboard, back in the 1800s.
Yeah.
not really anything monumental that's happened since then. But the electric guitar, think about, like pre-1970s, there was no such thing as finger tapping. Van Halen came along. We're just still radically defining what's possible, to do on the instrument. And part of that, is because of the popularity of it. There's so many players, which means more people, trying to figure out how to innovate and move it forward.
So to that point, Rob Scallion, he is innovating, and this might be his most, his Hail Mary here. I'm not sure, but here's a clip from his video called Shovel Metal. No, not the snow shovel.
Snow shovel's not gonna do it.
No.
You need some metal shovel.
It's already plugged in. That was heavy.
Yeah.
It's a great riff.
You can get a lot done with that one string.
Yeah.
Wow.
Maybe that's the future of guitars now. Maybe we're going to shovel.
Well, Petrucci went to 8 strings, and this Rob went to 1.
We should, definitely. So Liquid Tension Experiment 3 just came out. Everybody should go check that out. And then, shoot, I forgot the other thing. But yes, Dream Theater's new one is going to have the 8-string guitar. That's another way that guitars are innovating. I mean, we're changing the number of strings. I mean, they have like these 40-string guitars and stuff, which is just maybe a little overkill. But I think 7, 8, and 9 are pretty standard now.
Yeah, this is such a debate you can get into, with the whole gent stuff. But I don't know. Like for me, I don't necessarily feel the need to go too much beyond 7. You're thinking like, you're stomping on the bass guitar at that point. You want to have a little bit of division of labor. The bass has a job, the guitar has a job, and they all have different ranges in the frequency spectrum, that they occupy. But Brandon says 10 is too far. I think that's true. I would even say like 9 is too far. Yeah, it just depends on if you're able to make it musical, I guess. But for me, it's a personal decision you have to make. Like, do you want to I spend my time more on like developing my technique and getting better at what I already have, as opposed to adding more strings, which sometimes just complicates things. But whatever, if that's your thing, if you're like, I gotta go 666 strings, do it.
I think part, like we were talking about earlier, so many of the changes and the evolution of the guitar was practical issues, pragmatic issues.
Yeah, right.
And so I think the part of the reason why we went from 6 to 7 was because, you go to a live show and they've got like 12 guitars because they're all tuned a little differently, or they've got a different setup for a different tone, for a different style of music they're going to play.
Yeah.
So now you're switching guitars out every time. You have to have 12 guitars. Well, if you just extend the range on a single guitar, now maybe you only need 4 or 5 guitars instead of 12.
And if I can just vent for a minute, the alternate tuning thing also kind of bothers me. It's fine. It's like, whatever, do your thing. But there's so much creativity that you can source just from standard tuning if you're willing to just learn more about the instrument and music theory and voicings and scales, I never get bored. Like every video I do, I have like, 20 riffs that I have to throw away, because it's just too much. I can't put them all in. And it's just like when you start studying scales and harmony, like you just never get bored. There's so much you can do with just 6 strings. It's amazing. And not even, tuning things differently. I'm still trying to understand standard tuning, much less, do all these different tunings.
Do you think some of it, like for instance, in drop D, I mean, my guess is a lot of people do that because it's just easier to play certain riffs, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So I mean, that's also.
I'm not saying you shouldn't use alternate tunings and drop D and whatnot. I'm just saying, like, if you think you've reached the limit of your exploration on standard tuning, you're wrong.
Oh, yeah.
There is so much you can do. It's never ending. So before you look to innovate there, just try learning, the damn thing, the 6-string twanger as it is, just basic standard tuning. I promise you, there's an unlimited amount of innovation left right there.
Learn that 6-string twanger.
Do
Yeah.
it. Do it.
The twanger. Not sure I've ever heard a guitar called a twanger before.
Twang it, bro. You can twang it if you want.
Yeah. Now, so while we're talking about this and the guitar, what you can do with it, and different tones and the uniqueness to different players, I came across this this collab. It was put out back in October. This was the first I saw about it. It's Bohemian Rhapsody, but it's Nuno Betancourt, Tobin Abasi, Steve Vai, Zach, and Brian May
from Queen.
Yeah. I just found this week while doing research for this episode, and I was like, how did I miss this? Anyway, it's really interesting to see you have to go watch the whole video, but here's a clip of it, and you kind of get a feel for like how each person approaches the guitar. So let's check that out.
Eli, you're right. Oh, and Ingrid J.
Oh yeah, Ingrid. You got to watch the whole thing. It's so good.
Guitars played all at the same time. Yeah, it's hilarious. Right? The G3 just gratuitous shred fest. Remember? Like Steve Vai and John Petrucci and Joe Satriani or Yngwie, and they just all go to town at the end as fast as they can all at the same time.
Yeah,
such a glorious mess.
At different parts of this video, they each kind of like take a lead, but. And also, what an emotionally charged melody. I mean, just that whole song has just a very, very soaring emotional melody.
It's a rhapsody, which actually, that's like the classical structure that we talked about in the last week's episode, right? Where it's just always changing. That's Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yeah. There you go. Brandon said, fun fact about Brian, he's played on stage with My Chemical Romance a few times. So I'm actually going to see My Chemical Romance this fall in October.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, as of right now, the concert's still on, but it's supposed to be played in LA. And I don't know, LA is maybe never opening back up again, ever. Who knows?
It's open right now, for the most part, I think.
Like live music? Live venues are open?
Oh, that's a good question. I think there's some live venues going on. I saw Yngwie play actually in Vegas the other day. It was a socially distanced show. You could see a few scant people in the crowd. They were very distant. But Yngwie was so happy to be back shredding. Like he just had this look on his face the whole time, like I haven't played in a million years, and I'm so happy to be back. Playing a million miles an hour, my box stuff. He was so pumped. I've never seen Yngwie so pumped. He even got down on the stage, like he did when he was younger, in his like splits position.
Oh yeah.
He's still mobile enough to do that, but it's good.
I had a lot of time at home to practice stretching.
Yeah, apparently stretching the whole time.
Yeah. Okay. So unfortunately, I'm up against a hard deadline today, so I got to get rolling. But hopefully, we have made the case that the guitar is the greatest instrument of all time for almost every reason. And it can do anything any other instrument can do 10 times better.
Most things. There's a few things that we have some limitations with. Like you can't play a 7-note chord, for example. And on the piano, that's pretty easy.
Oh, good. That is true. Good point.
Unless you have a 7-string guitar. But,
and if you had two more than one hand, well, you could probably do it because you could use both hands on the fretboard.
Well, you can use
the guitar wins.
Still wins. Yeah.
Yeah.
Easy win.
All right. Well, appreciate everybody joining us. Hopefully you can now go tell all of your piano friends that your instrument is better than theirs. And as always, the world ends with you. So make it metal.